For cycle 73 day C strength, we are starting with an EMOM, 4 rounds, 4 different exercise blocks. So it'll be about 16 minutes. The first exercise grouping is actually going to be 2 in the minute. So it's 3 pass-throughs with a Rogue band. So in a perfect world, we would do this with a PVC pipe. With the Rogue bands or the super bands, you're going to want to use on the lower end of resistance, so the orange or the red, or anywhere where there's like a blue one, the thinner ones. So you're going to have members go a little outside shoulder width. And the goal is that we're starting at hip level and we're coming up and over and pulling on that band tension just a little bit so that we can have a supported pass through. Okay, so that's coming up and over the head, all the way to the glutes and back over. They're going to do 3 of these before going into their windmills. Now, if you have members where this feels uncomfortable for them, you can have them widen their grip and try it that way. You can also have them just go as far as they can go and then exhale, bring it back through. As far as they can go, exhale as they bring it back through. If this is still uncomfortable for them, feel free to give them something where they're actually just kind of moving around the head like in around the world so that they're getting some of that shoulder mobility without feeling like they're placing stress on the shoulders themselves. You can also opt to have them do a plank to pike variation because that will get them into that overhead range and give them some range of motion in a loaded position, which can make them feel a little bit more comfortable. So if you're going to use an option like that, you would have them find their plank and then drive the hips up. So you can see how this is putting them in that overhead position, but the load into the shoulder joint gives them a little bit more proprioception or a little bit more awareness. So it helps them feel a little bit more supported. So a couple different options for that one. So they'll do 3 of whatever variation is comfortable for them. And then we're gonna do 3 and 3 windmills. So for the windmill, the way that I demo this is if you stand square, if the kettlebell is on the right side, your opposite foot takes a half step forward and then you're rotating your toes away. So we're on this 45-degree angle. From there, you're thinking about pushing this hip crease and sending that butt cheek back at a 45-degree angle. Okay, so as they do that, they rotate and look up towards the bell. Okay, so this is something where you could have them go body weight just to get that motion before adding the weight on. Okay, so another way you could do this is, look, we're hinging. We're doing a stagger stance hinge. We're rotating the feet and hinging. Now we're rotating as we hinge. So it's just a slightly off-center deadlift. So with the bell, they're gonna clean and press or snatch that bell up. Opposite foot is a half step forward. Toes are rotated on a 45-degree angle. And we're sending that back hip pocket back towards the opposite wall at like a 45-degree, okay? What you might see with this is as people start to hinge, they might swing their hips. So try to make sure that they are staying in that nice diagonal plane and not rotating the hips as they drive into that hinge. 3 and 3 each set. Minute 2 for this EMOM is gonna be a Z press, so seated with legs out in front. Typically what I have members do here is you're gonna bring yourself into that grip for the bell and you're gonna cheat clean. So other hand is helping you as you bring that bell into the rack. Exhale, press, inhale down. So we're gonna go 8 and 8 here, a little higher rep. So you might advise them that, you know, if they've done a Z press before when we've done 5 reps, this might feel a little bit heavier so they can bell down, or they can try and use that same size bell they've used previously and try to increase the reps. If somebody's having a hard time with this seated position because of hamstring tightness, so what that would look like is they're dumping into that posterior part of their pelvis. Ideally, we want to sit up nice and tall. If they're rotating backwards, you can have them sit on a yoga block or on the 6-inch plyo box so that they have more flexibility in their hamstrings, and that's still going to continue to challenge their core, but it's going to put them in a more stacked ideal position. Exercise 3 is going to be a side plank rotation. This is one of my favorite motions, so it's almost in every programming cycle that I do. I'm also trying to emphasize some rotational stability here because we have that bent press coming up in the last minute. So for side plank rotation, they can go knee and elbow. Just make sure they're squeezing their glutes forward so that they're in a nice straight line if you were to look at them from above. Taking that arm all the way through and then reaching back up to the ceiling. They can also go straight leg, nice and strong, staying stacked from a shoulder, hip, knee, ankle perspective, and also in the shoulder. And you can also progress them up to full arm for that rotation, staying strong in the plank the entire time. Ideally, I don't want them to stagger the feet because we want to try to stay stacked and keep that neutral hip extension. So when you stagger the feet, what ends up happening is there is a slight hinge. So if they're staggering the feet because the straight leg is too challenging, have them go on their knees and really emphasize that neutral hip positioning. Our last minute of this opening EMOM is going to be the bent press. We went over this at the meeting. I was not there, so Katie and Josiah and some of our other Strong First peeps took you through this. So the bent press is actually not a press at all. It's meant to help with overhead stability, and it's all about building tension under the bell. The heavier you go, the easier it is to feel the movement, okay? Because if that bell, like let's say you typically press a 16 and you're trying to bend press with a 14 or a 16, your body is gonna try to press the bell and then we're missing the movement entirely. So the way that I coach this is if I'm in my rack position, right? So if this is my kettlebell, I wanna try to tuck my elbow into my opposite hip pocket. So I'm taking my elbow, making a nice big rainbow to take it over my massive, gigantic lat and sending it into my opposite hip pocket. Eyes are over the bell. So I should feel all of this lat tension, and I'm gonna feel like my core is being wrung like a towel, okay? So rainbow the elbow up and over, opposite hip pocket. I'm gonna pretend like my hand is stuck under a shelf, and I'm keeping that pressure as I drop my body under, and then I'm coming all the way tall, controlling the bell down. Okay? There's a couple different versions of a bent press. So I am a squatty bent presser. I have a slight hybrid because I start to send my hips back and then I drop under, but I'm more of a squatty bent presser. So this bell is a little light for a true bent press, but with the bell, we're dropping that elbow into the opposite hip pocket, moving the body away, and then standing tall. Okay, there are people who will find the same amount of tension, push their hips under so that they're hinging more than squat, and then come all the way tall, okay? I realize I just sent my whole ass at the camera. Hopefully you can see the difference in terms of, right, we're hinging to hit that bent press versus we are squatting. If they are a squatty bent presser, as they drop down, they can also leverage this hand against the knees to give themselves some stability, okay? Let me know if you guys have any questions with that. For our second work block on Friday Strength Day C, we're doing a single arm armor building complex, which is 2 cleans, 1 press, 3 squats. So they'll do one side, then they'll do the other side. Then they're going to do a pelvic cleanser with a double overhead march. And then we want to try to encourage them to find rest somewhere between 30 and 45 seconds, depending on how heavy they are going. Because typically when this is done in a Strong First weekend, you're rotating through with a partner, so you're getting rest. Because we have built-in rest, that means they can potentially go heavier. Also, it's a single rep on the press, which is typically going to be the limiting movement for somebody grabbing a heavier bell. So try to encourage your members to play around with a heavier bell for the complex because it's a single press and we're encouraging mandatory rest, okay? So for 2, 1, 3, they're gonna find that nice strong clean. So that's 1, 2, exhale as we press, bring that back down, and then 3 squats. making sure that they're not rotating because it is a single-sided weight. And then they would take it back down and then do the other side. So I did make a note in here if somebody's not gonna strict press, right? So if we do our 2 cleans, they're gonna push press. I want them to do an active negative down, okay? So the reason we want that is because that is actually gonna help encourage increased overhead strength, whereas the ballistic catch will not. So once they've done both sides, they find 2 same size bells, clean, push overhead, alternating march, trying to stay nice and strong and stacked on that stance leg. I believe we have 6 and 6 here, so 12 total. Control the bells down, back to the ground, mandatory rest. Repeat, as this is a 12-minute AMRAP to finish off Friday or day C.